We fundamentally turn aircraft into infrastructure. And so we are going to see in the next 2, 3, 4 years some really cool certified airplanes come out. Here's the thing, you can either choose to be a tool or not be a tool. God's will is going to be accomplished.
Have you ever thought about why flying private is like so rare and driving private is so common? Why do only the rich and the famous and the elites have private planes and a lot of people have their own private cars? What happened there? Why is it so expensive? I sat down with Alex Taylor and he unpacked what he's doing. He's building a business to actually solve that, to actually bring private flight to the masses and to bring it all across the world, to the four corners of the globe, as he says. And you know what's even more fascinating about that is he's doing it with a kingdom mindset. He's doing it guided by his faith. And he shares his story from growing up in the Middle East as an MK, missionary's kid, to founding a company, earliest drone builder, to actually then being baptized and now running a company that is tackling this huge problem. And he gets into the specifics. It's super interesting. So you'll want to stick around for this one. I'm Mike Sudik. This is Faith and Tech. Alex Taylor here from Orb Aerospace, janitor and founder. So thank you for being here. I'm really excited to talk about it. This is going to go in probably a million different directions, Alex, but hopefully we can keep it a little focused.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
Yeah. So Orb Aerospace. So tell us what it does, because I know you guys have had a little bit of pivots, but I think you have a couple taglines that you guys have gone through, but what's the latest iteration?
Yeah. So we fundamentally turn aircraft into infrastructure. And so you think about all these people who are building what we call aviation for lethality. So they're building what my co-founder Brian, who flew A-10s and F-16s in close air support roles for 25 years, calls them the flying hand grenades. And so there's been this massive explosion in aviation as weapons. And we've actually always known aviation as weapons. We've also always known aviation as convenience. So drone delivery, air taxis, large commercial airliners like quote unquote flying buses have been commoditized. But there's no one really building aviation for resilience. And what we mean by that is that there's all these places, 80% of the world's never had aviation before. So 80% of the world's population has never set foot on an airliner. 95% of the world's population has never used or flown a drone. 99% of the world's population has never flown an GA airplane. So that GA, general aviation, Piper, Cessna, private helicopter, private aircraft. And so there's this, that statistic is crazy. And that's like Dennis Muhlenberg, actually, we borrowed that from Dennis when he was running Boeing. We first started Orb, and then we actually was recently talking to Dennis, and he picked it out of our deck, and he's like, I really like this stat. I ran Boeing on this because he's like, when you start to look at the business of Boeing, it's like, even the most commoditized form of air transportation has only reached 20% of the world's population, which is a crazy statistic, right?
Yeah.
So, and we look at like the number of passenger miles traveled. It ends up being that top, there's billions of tickets, like I don't know, somewhere like hundreds of millions, if not a billion worth of tickets sold every year. But those tickets are being sold to the same people. Yeah. Over to people like you and I flying, a dozen or more times per year, not new people entering new airplanes. Yeah. And so that growth is happening at about 5% per year. So eventually we'll kind of get there. But we discovered that the biggest problem with aviation actually was never the airplanes. So it wasn't the Airbuses, it wasn't the 737.
The technology.
It wasn't not the airplanes. It was actually infrastructure. Yeah. So aviation's always been dependent on infrastructure. Since, and the reason for that is, like imagine if I sold you a car and said, cool, now go build all the roads. Yeah. You sell someone an airplane, the best airplane in somewhere like, the Philippines. Yeah. And you say, okay, now go build a bunch of airports. The Philippines has 10 times the population of Michigan, but 1/10 of the airports, right? So there's an order of magnitude difference in both directions. And so we started to understand when we talk about like building aviation for resilience, it's like, how do we, one, decouple aviation from it's critical, the infrastructure it's been attached to forever. Yeah. But then not only that, can we become infrastructure in places where it has been destroyed by natural disasters, conflict, or has never existed to begin with?
Yeah. So like, why is that important? Like, why? I understand the stat, but then like, what does that unlock, or like, what gets you excited about that? That is it. Somebody says like it was a luxury, or it's that's just kind of a natural,
trickle down economics.
Yeah.
Like
it's I don't know. Yeah. I'll
build this great. I'll build. Joby will run the
air
taxis, and then they'll trickle down, and eventually we'll get everything else. Start with the premium goods. historically it doesn't stand up to the if you look at the way that transportation's evolved, you have these different step functions. You go from like walking to boats, from boats to horses, and so each time you're sort of, if you don't have a horse and you don't live by the ocean, your radius of your life is like this. It's like 5 square miles.
Yeah.
Right. We actually had a little bit of a tangent, but we actually had a missionary bush pilot at our house over dinner, and he was talking about how he flew someone into pastor into a town from the village. It was 40 miles. It took him less than 20 minutes in a Cessna 206, and the guy was quiet the entire time, just looking out the window. And when he landed, he just thought, well, just gave another pastor a ride, no big deal. He's just super nonchalant. But he turned around and the guy said, like, sir, 20 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, I saw the tree that I sleep under. And he was like, what do you mean? He's like, the tree that I halfway between my village in this town is 40 miles. He said, I can't do 40 miles in one day. And when I'm walking, so I go 20 miles and I sleep under this tree. And then he's like, I can't believe I'm here 10 minutes later. I just saw the tree that I slept under. And that's crazy. That's a time, like that's the closest thing we have to a time machine.
Yeah.
This is like this beautiful thing about aviation is that, and the reason why I was so attached to it growing up was that it was like this, like you woke up in one time zone with, friends who were like family. We grew up in Istanbul, Turkey. And then you'd, in less than 24 hours, you'd be almost at the exact same time that you left. You would land in Chicago or California, and, you'd be with family. And it's just this crazy time machine. So the reason why it's so important to build infrastructure independent aviation is the same reason it was important for us to take the fundamental principles that ran trains and turn that into cars.
Yeah.
Like it's that same step function, right? So like we went from horses and carriage, right, to trains, locomotive, and that was dominant for 80 years, right? We had trains and no cars for a long time.
Yeah.
But the same fundamental mechanics, like you as a mechanical engineer understand, like, a big steam engine is just, compression, expansion. It's the exact same technology we have in internal combustion engine today, just huge, right? And relatively slow. And so that same fundamental tech had, there's a whole like 80 years trickle down. Like, no, it didn't. And the reason why it didn't is because the fundamental assumptions around trains, again, it's the same thing we see with airliners today. It's attached to infrastructure. Mm-hmm. The limiting factor was always you go from a station to station on tracks. Mm-hmm. It's binary. It's linear. It's super expensive. And so you're never going to go out and buy a Union Pacific steam engine the same way you're not going to go out and buy a 737. In the same way you're never going to have enough money. Only nation states in the world's most wealthy people have enough capital to sustain it using the infrastructure those things need. And so you can start thinking about automotive less as like its own independent thing that kind of came out of nowhere, and more of like it's just a decentralized train. And that if you tie that back, like it's just the very automotive didn't evolve out of taxis in New York. Automotive evolved out of farmers and replacing horses and plows in their fields using the exact same steam engines, taking them off the tracks, putting these massive paddle tires. You can look at pictures of it, but we have a steam show out near Lowell every year, Clarksville. And it literally is a steam engine that's been just taken off the tracks. So that was just like that was the one thing that needed to happen, and then it's another series of 1,000 events, and you end up with what we now understand as cars. And that infrastructure piece is really, really, really important. And so they tried for a long time to build some replacement to horses and carriages in places like New York, right? So they built like trolley cars. They had electric cars in 1907, Baker Electric. But none of those things really built a business. There was really no economic incentive because there was so much, it was a commodity to have a horse and carriage anyway. The economic incentive ended up being farmers. And so 60% of America used to be involved in agriculture not even just pre-industrial revolution, but pre-tractor, specific tractor. now 3% of America's workforce is involved in agriculture. Wow. So arguably, the question is like, what was the most important invention in this sort of tech tree from trains to tractors to cars?
Yeah.
Was it the car or the tractor? And I would argue that it was the tractor.
Yeah.
And so the question that we're trying to ask at Orb is, if the same thing is happening between centralized, expensive, infrastructure-dependent 737s today, who's building the tractor of aviation?
Yeah.
So yeah, everyone else can worry about the taxis. Everyone else can worry about the weapons. Who is building critical, like foundation level functions that haven't changed in hundreds or thousands of years, that aviation is the best tool to accelerate those things or restore those things, but we haven't, for just pure complacency reasons, we haven't done it yet.
So that's a single. So in the case of the tractor, they're using steam engine technology and they're moving into the field, right? So they're saying that's like a fundamental technology. They're morphing it and adapting it a little bit. In the same way, it's like we do have small planes, but they're reliant on the infrastructure, which is what you're saying.
Yeah, they're like I mean,
they're miniaturized versions of the large technology.
They're the equivalent of like the pump carts, right? Yeah, so you have you know, it's not it's the fundamental concept is still the same. So you can make the train smaller, but it actually doesn't work because it's still it's a worse train, right?
Yeah.
And so the question's like, how do you? So what we're building is vertical takeoff and landing, so you no longer need any airports.
Yeah.
Autopilots, so that you no longer need traditional radio infrastructure, need to yourself be a pilot.
Yeah.
We call it just build better airplanes faster. It's like this massive umbrella over Orb, and you can kind of attach everything we do to better, faster airplanes.
Yeah.
And so, but you start to think about these, you know, you start to steelman the weapons argument for a moment. And
unpack that a little bit. What do you mean?
Yeah. Start to really consider what happens when all of these flying hand grenades get used.
Yeah.
So we're talking about vulnerable populations.
So this is like a kamikaze drone almost. Is what you're saying.
Kamikaze FPV drone. This is like kind of like this is where the hype is. And one of the distinguishing factors of like why the tractor worked is because it had an overlooked customer in an unregulated market that hadn't changed in thousands of years.
Yeah.
So there was no hype around. There was genuinely no hype around the tractor.
Yeah.
It was
pent up need, basically.
Dirty business. And really it's the if you start to look at like this analogy is so deep.
Yeah.
I hate like don't want to beat a dead horse, but like it's you know, the very first automotive companies financially, the ones who actually made it, they weren't building taxis in New York. This is Ford, Fiat, Lamborghini all started off building tractors. They all started like Lamborghini started off building tractors, and that's like this lore. But what they don't understand is that you have to move in increments that make sense.
Yeah.
And you can't just go. You need to be. It's this just such a fine balance that like good, and I'm not going to say good founders, but people who want to build the future that we want to live in have to balance living in that future and imagining the future and understanding the increments that it takes to get there.
Yeah.
And so often you can do one or not the other. So you understand what the next increment is. Like, cool, this is not 0 to 1. This is, you know, if it's just a normal business, operating that business, how do we grow 10% year over year, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever. Or you have people who are just constantly living the future, and it's like you can't operationalize anything. Like I had someone recently say, like, that guy can't even operationalize his breakfast. Like if you want to invent something, like he's your inventor. Yeah. You know, but like he's never going to operationalize something that's going to be super relevant. Yeah. And it's very, very hard to do both. And so part of this understanding is like, how do you go from, you know, once you take airplanes that don't need airports, don't need shipping, don't need traditional power grids, don't need specialty fuels, don't need specialty maintenance, do not need to be stored in these large buildings. You're fundamentally like you're taking the trains off the tracks, and you have to start calling it something else. And so we call them orbs. Yeah. And that's part of why we named the business what we did. We were calling them eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing aerial vehicles. That's more of a traditional term. That's like the industry term. It's like the horseless, but I think it's the horseless carriage version of the word car. Yeah. Like you're not saying, oh, that's my automobile, or you're not saying that's my horseless carriage. So we've evolved the word car over time. We just, I called it reverse Kleenex. We wanted to like name the product because the product didn't have a good name.
Yeah.
Like air taxis are also not.
No.
It doesn't describe what that's attaching the name of your product to one of the many hundreds of applications is just, it's going to cause confusion down the road. So we kind of like wanted to name the product and then named the company.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
So how do you, thank you for that, kind of context around it, because I think that's important. It's important to frame how you think about it, but how, like when you go after something like that, then how are you attacking a certain market? So like traditionally be like defense, or you'd be, okay, we're going to go after it, like agriculture. It's like that was an industry that went after it. It was taking a technology, adapting it. How are you thinking about that to get traction and to get, for lack of a better word, like momentum around this concept? Maybe I'm not stating that correctly.
No. It's important. So I think that the analogy still holds true. It's important that our customer is unregulated, or should say has a lower barrier of entry for regulation, has endemic systemic needs that have never been met. Mm-hmm. So relatively low competition. And it's the right step function from where we are right now to where it's relatively easy to get to that application. So for example, like air taxis, you're worried about acoustics, you're worried about turbulence between buildings, you're worried about zoning, you're in a highly congested area, lots of regulations. Whereas in our case, we're actually optimizing for performance. So we're managing less variables for and this is like where, I'm going to give it away. We're managing less variables for a higher margin market for an end user who's more willing to pay. Yeah. It's like who's willing to pay? The state of Florida, when they're hit with a hurricane, they have no power, no communications, no logistics. Those are the three pillars of infrastructure. Yeah. So we build airplanes that become, not only do they not need any of those things, they actually become those things. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. So we call it just on-demand infrastructure. And so who's more willing to pay? DeSantis, when those three things are out and they need to be restored, or you have the option between a $70 Uber and an $80 air taxi. Yeah. Right. It's like, or if it's a drone delivery, it's like, I'm going to pay for this $100,000+ system with $9 hamburgers. Yeah. Right. So, So, but it's unpopular. Yeah. It sucks. Like it sucks to have to convince people that that's important enough to build in a culture and society that has already formulated its opinions around what it experiences the most. And if you're talking
what do you mean by that?
If you're talking to investors or VCs, they're familiar with the Uber problem. Yeah. Yeah. They're very familiar. When's the last time, and maybe their homes have backup generators so they never even notice when there's a brownout in California due to wildfires. Yeah. Right? It's like, it's just not a problem for them. And so it takes this weird combination of worldviews of like, I grew up in the Middle East, seeing all of these endemic needs, no GA, general aviation. Yeah. It's like, man, like there's so many fundamental societal problems that we could fix with airplanes right now that for some reason we're not. Yeah. Our creative director was born in the Philippines. We actually overlapped with some time in Turkey. Brian was in places that had no infrastructure because he had just blown it all up. Mm-hmm. And when ISIS was out of Mosul, guess who was coming back? Syrian Christians. Yeah. And what don't they have? Power, communications, logistics. Yeah. So if you have these three things, you have everything. Like everything. Yeah. You can rebuild your entire society and culture and your entire economy. But if you don't have any one of these things, you don't have anything. Yeah. And we just, as America, we've been living in this 80 years of unprecedented safety and security that is statistically like 80-year cycles. Like it's not going to continue. Yeah. And even if it's not Americans, you think of like you're trying to convince people who have the perspective of not just, which I came back to the States knowing that even if I worked at McDonald's, like even if I was making $18,000, $20,000 a year, I'm in the top 5% of earners anywhere in the world. In the world. Yeah. That's insane. Yeah. That's crazy. I just need to control my spend. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Budgeting for a family, we still need to do that, you know.
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
you know, I just need to control my. And so it was this. You're trying to now convince someone who, you know, is very, very comfortable with their 7-figure salary, doesn't think twice about a $150 air taxi ride to the airport because, you know, time is money, whatever, that there's 3 billion people out there who don't have access to their economy because in the 40s and 50s, doctors and lawyers sued the crap out of general aviation manufacturers. And so for 70 years, aviation hasn't changed. And because of those 70 years and those doctors and lawyers and unlimited liability we allowed to persist in our country because of love of money, that 2 to 3 billion people can't sell anything on the open marketplace, don't have power, don't have communications, don't have logistics.
Yeah.
Right? It's like these are places that don't have the like America is geographically super advantaged. We can build highways, we can build interstates.
Yeah.
The Philippines can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? And so like it's a shame that this hasn't happened before now.
Yeah.
And it's like in some ways it's, you know, it's just the complacency of the West. And it takes this weird combination of like fighter pilot, missionary kid, engineers, and the industrialism of the Midwest to say, hey, I think we're going to build thousands, if not millions of airplanes.
Yeah.
They can go anywhere in the world and provide power, communications, and logistics to accelerate your economy.
Yeah.
To actually connect your citizens to their economy for the first time ever, on one hand, or when all those FPV drones, all those weapons are used against you, what are they going after? Your substations, your seaports, your airports, your roads, the convoys.
Your infrastructure.
Yeah. So we'll accelerate your economy on your best day, and we'll pick up the pieces on your worst day. But no matter what, we're going to build accessible aviation for all mankind.
Yeah. That's amazing. When you were talking about that, you mentioned the complacency, the 80 years of prosperity, but also kind of you mentioned, you made a comment about kind of some litigation or something around that, like which is almost like going down a conspiracy like route, right? Not a conspiracy, but it's like I automatically thought of like nuclear power.
It is a conspiracy.
It is a conspiracy, but it's almost like nuclear power. You know, we were talking before about
it's not
people are doing that.
And it's
like,
as Christians, we have the upper hand because we can explain this.
Yeah.
Other people can't explain this without getting super hokey. We're like, the love of money is the root of all evil. Like, it's an easy explanation.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the conspiracy is that there is the anti-good, the anti-God, Lucifer, who's constantly trying to destroy the image of God in man. And so he's going to go after everything. And he's going to set up all these idols, and all you have to do is bow down and worship to one of them, and you're compromised. Yeah. And so there is a conspiracy. It is his kingdom versus God's kingdom, and it is the entire story of the Bible. It's just, you just can't take like one person or one family or one dynamic and be like, that's it. Like there is a common thread. They actually, like, it's actually, what's crazy, it's more meta than they think it is. Yeah. Because they're like, no, it's not this individual. It's the family. It's the family connected to Mossad. It's the family connected to the CIA. It's all the intelligence agency. No, it's broken people all over the world being manipulated by powers, principalities, demonic forces, and using anything they can: sex, money, power. Yeah. The enemy's 3 favorite strings to pull. He'll pull one of those, get you to stop subduing the earth and start building towers of Babel. Yeah. So sorry.
Amen. That was an awesome rant. I don't think I could have.
It's not a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy.
It is the ultimate conspiracy.
It is. It's the ultimate conspiracy. Yeah, it is. It's like the enemy is conspiring against humankind.
So in that way, though, you talked about the love, the greed aspect of things that have introduced roadblocks to what you're trying to do. Yeah. Which have created the system that we are currently in. Yep. So, but in the same way, you have to use capital. You have to somehow go out and raise capital to make this new infrastructure system. So you have to have some sort of a case for ROI. So you still have to play by the rules on some level. So you talked about the disaster relief, correct? Like that was an industry that you would initially target.
Yeah. So two primary places where you need infrastructure where it's either never existed to begin with, so like the Philippines, or where it's been destroyed by natural disasters, like North Carolina, or by conflict, like the Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so we use the three examples are like one of the best that we see, and they're ongoing today. They're persistent. They're recurring. They have customers that are willing to pay. There are civilians, women, children, widows, orphans stuck in the middle. So those are the three. Those are sort of our three initial battle. I said two, but like we think about it in terms of it never existed or it's been destroyed. But those are our primary customers. Are those two?
Yeah. So when you look at the things that you're doing, it almost sounds like I'm asking a question we've already asked, but it's like, how come no one's done some of it from a technology standpoint? Yep. They're still playing inside the bounds of, like the analogy you're saying, like the train. They're trying to make a more efficient train, or they're still playing by the infrastructure that exists, but it's still the military has tried these like vertical takeoff like vehicles. They've drones have been going crazy because of the technology shifts that have created some of like the smaller electronics and stuff like that. But that's different scale than what you're talking about. So I'm kind of curious, like, why now? Like, why has it not happened before? Why do you feel like some of the breakthroughs or some of the things you're chasing, kind of first principles of how you're thinking about it, that are different than maybe past iterations?
So we go back to the build better airplanes faster, and so there's a better airplanes component to this, which I think is the same thing that every air taxi. Is everyone who's working on VTOL right now is all benefiting from the same variables in the better category, but the faster category I think is where the actual bottleneck has been for the last 60 years. So it's it's the same root cause as like the deindustrialization across all sectors, and specifically in Michigan. One of the reasons why it's important for us to be here is that in the 80s, Reagan used tariffs to keep Japanese and Korean automakers. Essentially, they said either base your factory, Toyota, base your factory in the U.S. to avoid tariffs, or you're just going to pay this really heavy tariff so that they're going to be competitive with American, and so.
Which they ended up doing
because of which they did, exactly. So because of tariffs, Michigan in the Midwest in general at large, but the automotive industry is like the last bastion of American industrialism. So we still build Chevy Silverados at a competitive price point to Chinese imports of the same quality, generally the same product. They go head to head even without significant tariffs. Like we can do it because we maintained our industrial base in the automotive category. That can be translated into aviation. As in we have all this massive automotive supply chain that, not to give away all the cars, but like we've got all of these tier 1 and tier 2, tier 3 family-owned automotive suppliers. They're operating at like 60 to 70% capacity. They want to diversify into something, but they don't have an OEM that's not a major automotive OEM saying, hey, build this. And so I think the bottleneck has been, if you look at a Cessna 172, it was around $14,000 in the 1950s. That's when, basically like, let's just assume fully industrialized America is like 1950 through 70. Then we started coming off. And so in the 50s, that same, $14,000 adjusted for inflation today is like roughly like $140,000. So, somewhere in the range of like the nicest truck you can buy, from a dealership. And so that's not crazy to think of like, well, it's an airplane. So, and it's made at lower volumes and it's a new thing, especially then. But, around the same time, we actually started to see economies of scale start working for us in some pretty crazy ways, to where things have gotten relatively cheaper over time, except some of these industrialized goods. So aviation in particular today. So we went from that to today, that same 172 or the same 182, because they don't really actually make, they make very, very few 172 now. So it's that same Cessna 182, same type certificate,
so
same airplane.
What size airplane is that for people that don't know?
Like four seats.
Seater? Okay.
4 seats.
Gotcha.
Yeah. 4 seats, generic Cessna, really just looks like, look up Cessna. It's probably a 172 or 182. Super prolific. And we also count airplanes in tens of thousands, lifetime manufacturing, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because we count models of cars in hundreds of thousands. Yeah. Just to put that in perspective. So that was the ramping up that should have led to greater economies of scale, more volume, airspace modernization. You're not going to see anything change with ATC, air traffic control, all this stuff that we're seeing about, like, it's understaffed. We need to modernize this until there's an industry that's actually forcing that and driving that. Until you're utilizing the airspace to the extent that you're causing problems in the actual control room. Not just, this is boring, I don't have enough air traffic controllers. It's not like a labor shortage issue.
Right.
It's actually like a pure market, like the market's
Capacity
driving.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. The market's actually driving modernization. So starting in the 1950s and 60s, rich doctors and lawyers could afford, the same guys who buy the really nice, like, Ford Expedition Platinum Max, right? Which is like roughly north of $100,000 car.
Yeah.
The same people buying those today were the same people who were getting into aviation back in the 50s and 60s. And unlike automotive, where we established, National Highway Safety Transportation, we built the highway system as, defense.
It was
defense infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
It's a defensive initiative. And so we had an incentive to keep those, like, marketable, so that we weren't it's not like you're going to have, like, oh man, like the general people who drive on highways and maybe get hurt on highways when it snows are mad that they got hurt, so, like, they don't have to use it. No, we actually want the population using it, maintaining it, keeping it. Like, we wanted them to see it as valuable. So we tolerate, I drive past the billboard, 250 traffic deaths this year in Michigan.
Yeah.
Good news, it's 20% less than last year.
Yeah.
Good job, everyone. Click it or ticket. Which, to put that in perspective, is roughly a wide body airliner going down in all 50 states once a year.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's what automotive did.
Yeah.
Aviation went a different path. That's limited liability. Aviation's went in the 50s and 60s. Because the demographic that was using general aviation was almost exclusively had time on their hands, money on their hands, and we had no incentive. If all of the airspace is just militarized, it doesn't matter. You don't pay for the airspace.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, doesn't matter. Yeah. If we shove all of the humans onto these big metal tubes and send them across country, they're content. They're never going to notice that this is not like the conspiracy, but like, let's put them on the flying bus of the sky.
Yeah.
And, like, they're never going to notice the freedom that they missed, having, total dominion over the sky. The vast majority of Americans, let's just get them to go point to point and then keep the airspace clear for everything else we want to do from a defense perspective. So there wasn't this dual incentive to open up airspace to everyone. In fact, opening up the airspace to everyone is a threat to all of the other operations going on, and especially now that we have airliners, it's very incumbent. And so that's what you see with the way that we're regulating drones today.
Yeah,
is that Part 107 was trying to we started to regulate private pilots like commercial pilots. I get the same medical examination. I see the same. I take the same tests along your way to get your airline transport rating, and then we carry that over into drones. So we started to regulate drones like we regulate private aviation.
Yeah.
So everything's being regulated as if you're an airliner, and it's not how it's not. There's no first principles understanding of what's actually being regulated.
Yeah.
And as someone who was in the room when Part 107 and Part 108 was being discussed in 2019, 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
I can affirm everyone's there as a retired airline captain.
Yeah.
Almost none of them had ever touched a drone before. All they're thinking about is deconflict from my very programmed route, and so all these doctors and lawyers started suing aircraft manufacturers. It led to a precedent of unlimited liability, which meant that if you did something stupid, and
they were wait, say that again. They were suing the manufacturers.
Yeah. So if you bought a Cessna, and hung it up on a power line, because you were a bad pilot or for whatever reason, you can probably sue Cessna and make like $10 million.
Interesting. Yeah, that was before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the precedent that was set, and like they just had really good, like the lawyers were the ones flying the airplanes. I mean, this is unfounded, but my personal I came back to the US and I was like, started building drones because we were poor, not poor, but limited resources. I worked construction for our neighbors to save up enough money to build a drone because I wasn't going to pay $250 an hour to be in a Cessna that was built 60 years ago. I would not just because not from an ideological. That was my dream to become a pilot. I just couldn't afford it. I had and this idea of like why is a 60-year-old an hour in a 60-year-old airplane still $250?
Yeah,
like seems crazy.
Yeah. But it goes back to first principles. What is it? Is it the jet fuel? Is it the actual cost of the airplane? Is it like that's where you unpack it?
It was the unlimited liability.
Exactly.
It meant we never reached scale.
Yeah.
So what happened is that the liability presence. This is like the worst. Like liabilities. It's like you want to do something fun in a city, like even have like like a worship gathering in a park. It's like what's gonna kill it? Liability. Like liability insurance. The city is gonna argue about it. Like, but it's like that ended up being this like the inflection point where aviation went from this like growing massive demand, had great economics, were functioning working businesses, safe pilots, to now Cessna builds 500 airplanes per year.
Wow.
And the same Cessna that was 140K is now almost 800.
Yeah.
800,000. So that's in today's dollars. That's factoring in inflation.
Yeah.
We've had a 8x inflation, or like honestly closer to 5 to 6x inflation of the same aircraft type certificate.
Yeah.
Over a period of 60 years, and it's the same stinking aluminum, same sheet metal. The only thing that's changed, the engines haven't even changed.
Yeah.
The only thing that's changed is the avionics, and they are still something you could have relatively easily made in 2010.
Yeah.
15 years ago. So there's so much work to do in this space.
Yeah.
Right. And so like it's really like the same way we found, industrial revolution, turn of the century, we found so many more applications, so many more uses for the foundational steam engine,
Yeah.
piston moves, crankshaft turns linear motion into rotary motion.
Yeah.
Like that was this just underutilized process. It was just like, I don't know why we haven't been doing this as well as we could have, and miniaturizing it and trying out different forms of combustion. So it seems obvious in hindsight, but we didn't do it for like 50 years.
Yeah.
And so and there was also this incumbent, locomotion. It's like, I don't need to bounce around in a car going a third of the speed of a train because I've got a train. Like there's no need. And so you have to balance all of these incentives, which in our case is like, we live in a really unique time in history where all of these incentives have come together. So
I'm curious though. So I want to stop you there because if you think about the same thing before they had cars and the comment you just made where I don't need to bounce around in something that's like a third the speed of a car or of a train, in that way, why didn't they raise the barriers then? You're saying because of the highway system, they wanted to utilize it, or why?
Yeah.
In the same way now, if someone has someone has a vehicle, it's like there's very little actual regulation that goes into getting a driver's license, and then you can take this like 2,000-pound object and you can just drive it into wherever you want
at 120 miles an hour.
Yeah, if you're a horrible
capable,
driver.
Honda,
and you can be texting while you're doing
Civic,
it. It's like
exactly.
That's not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Which I think there's a push to kind of regulate that. You talk about like self-driving or whatever. That's a whole nother tangent. But why was there the kind of no inhibiting of that as opposed to the other, which it was the cost. I mean, you kind of covered it a little bit.
It was just so if Cessna is losing 5 to 10 million on these lawsuits, that they can't win. They can't seem to win. There's odds are stacked against them.
Yeah.
And every time they sell a new airplane, then it's just more liability.
Yeah.
And they have to function as a business, so they need to figure out how to make it work. And for them, that basically just meant taper off sales.
And then you go back to
make it more expensive. So actually, so you go back to, so it went from at the moment that it was supposed to get less expensive.
Yeah.
And more people were supposed to be able to buy airplanes.
Yeah.
It got more expensive because of these lawsuits.
Yeah.
And so now you're trying to amortize a $5 million lawsuit across your whole business, which doubles the price of the plane, which reduces the number of people who can buy it. And so we never really reached economies of scale.
Which then they went back. I mean, maybe I'm inferring a little bit, but then they went back and said, okay, how do we stop these lawsuits from happening? Let's heap on the regulations and all the hoops you have to jump through so that we can decrease the number of instances, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
just decrease. Make sure that there's, in terms of like the FAA, if you want the best way, if this is like the extreme case, you go to the AI and you say, reduce carbon, then they kill off all the people. So this is like this is that case,
right?
But it's actually something that has played out over the last. This has actually played out over the last 60 years. You go to the FAA or the aircraft manufacturers and you say, hey, reduce the number of accidents. And they go, cool. Well, just make it really hard to fly.
Yeah. I mean,
it's just really hard to introduce new technology. Make it really hard for humans to get pilot's licenses. Make it a really taxing process. Make sure everything stays. Once you train something a certain way, make sure it stays that way. So at the very least, we do not risk our statistics getting worse.
Right.
So the trend line has to keep going down. And with that trend line going down, all of the second order effects that no one's thinking about is that kids like me could have never afforded to get their pilot's license.
Yeah.
Could have never had exposure to aviation. And the guys who are still doing it, the guys like Jeff Ostrander, who gave me my first ride, who are, giving Young Eagles rides, who are a part of the Experimental Aviation, Association. The guys who are doing that are dying faster than we're replacing the pilots.
Yeah.
And the pilots are turning into these public bus drivers. They're flying for regional airlines that don't own, GA airplanes on the side. So there's this whole world of like general aviation and, commercial airlines is like really two separate worlds.
Yeah. Do you think that's it's almost like there's a moment where you can capture this, or it is going to even go further that way. But there's also a case to make that for driving. Like if you use the analogy of just like general aviation, if no one had cars, it was extremely hard to get cars. You should take the bus everywhere.
It's
real expensive. That limits so much in terms of the economy and all the things you can do.
Imagine none of your friends had a car.
Yeah.
Imagine they were all really content on the bus.
But there's no Uber either, really.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
so you have a car, and they're like, bro, my buddy has a car. Like, and we went for a ride, and I was like, that car is so cool. I want to do a car. But there's no one manufacturing cars because there's so few of you that are willing to jump through all the hoops. So it becomes this like cracked gearhead sort of like super obsessed subgroup that's like 0.01% of the population. And, and there's no one, and the only way you're going to get a car is if you build it because there's not enough of a market to sell it. And that's where we're at with aviation. That is today, for every fully assembled certified aircraft that's sold, there are 2 amateur-built experimental airplanes that are sold. So amateur kit-built airplanes are being outselling certified aircraft by a factor of 2.
Wow.
So the market today is as if there was no OEM.
Wow.
As if there was no one, from an automotive perspective, there's no one for you to go buy a car from. You had to build it.
That's really fascinating.
So you either have to be super mechanically inclined and or super obsessed in order to spend all this money and all this time to become a pilot. Yeah. And so that's where the market is. That is the nut that we feel like we're cracking by, one, you have to turn aircraft. You have to achieve economies of scale, deregulate, which happened over the last 4 weeks. Crazy new thing called Mosaic.
Okay.
Instead of getting your pilot's license in 60 hours, it's now down to 20. You can go, as fast as it can be fully assembled aircraft that goes as fast as 250 knots.
Wow. As
long as they stall out, I think it's like 40 to 60.
Yeah.
So in the last 4 months, it's gone from totally bureaucratic to totally first principles engineering. And so we are going to see in the next 2, 3, 4 years, some really cool like certified airplanes come out that hopefully will become more affordable over time and solves the liability issue. Yeah. So really interesting timing, like the Lord's providence and all this, when we started Orb, where we started Orb.
Yeah.
The problems that we're working on, the team that he brought us early on, like some really interesting, like timing when you consider the historical context in these sort of waves of history that tend to repeat themselves.
Yeah. So that to switch gears to that and kind of to the folks of the podcast, which is Faith and Tech, is you talked about a couple of the other people that are your co-founders and people that are in the organization have similar history growing up, maybe overseas, maybe MKs, that sort of thing. how does that feed into your ethos, and how does that, as you're chasing getting the business going, you have a downstream effect of this helping some of those countries, some of those areas of the world's most populations that you mentioned. Tell me about how that fuels what you're doing, and then kind of how you're living that out, day to day.
Yeah, I had to contend with this when we just wrapped up a race, and about a year and a half ago, we were about to have our first kid. Ashley and I were living in an RV parked outside of the hangar in our friend's yard. It's been a fun couple of years. It really, genuinely, we have a saying at Orb, which is like, at least I'm not bored.
Yeah.
I need to bring it back. I used to say it a lot. But, I had to contend with this because we are pretty incompatible with some of the traditional ethos. The way that you kind of brought up before, we were chatting before the podcast, you talked about how like Grand Rapids is kind of trying to move into SaaS, but it's really like a late second mover kind of FOMOing into it. And it's like, we don't really have the transactional cultural values required to build an app, see if it works, fail, do it again, do it again, and then dump a bunch of quantitative capital into that.
Yeah.
We don't really have like, there's a culture built around that that's pretty incompatible with Midwest values.
Yeah.
So we have to read the room and understand like, what are we really good at? Like, and so we had to make that decision. Basically, one is, are we going to base ourselves somewhere else where there's abundant capital, lots of investors, a lot of history, tons of liquidity, risk adjusted, investors that risk and re-risk and have, there's a lot to be said, I think, for how much resources so many family offices in West Michigan fund West Coast VCs, and so much of the opportunity and the access to capital is funneled to the coasts.
Yeah.
Which has really, we're going to look back in 20 years, and I think we're going to see we drained our universities, colleges, and institutions.
Capital's going from West Michigan to the coast.
Yeah. Like all these, and we drained our ambitious young founder base.
Yeah.
And maybe founder base is like the right word for it.
Yeah.
That we took all of the most, forward-thinking competitive. You do a little demographic, survey of people who work at Tesla or SpaceX, and a good 30 or 40% of them were raised in the Midwest.
Yeah.
But if you want to build at the bleeding edge of software or hardware, if you want to stay in the Midwest, where are you going to work?
Yeah.
Carrier, GM, it's not inspiring. We don't have, and I'm just gonna be honest, we don't have inspiring tech companies to come work for in Grand Rapids, and we're not trying to be that. We're trying to solve really hard problems.
Yeah.
At the bleeding edge of personal aviation, bringing critical infrastructure to the four corners of the earth and making airplanes that land in your backyard a commodity, and doing it in a place that has a history of manufacturing at scale, in a place where we have the highest number of engineers per capita, 4 seasons, great cost of living, high quality of life, all these things, great. If we end up if we end up repatriating a lot of engineers who went to the coast and thought that was the only place they were going to have, if we repatriate a bunch of these engineers, great, second order effect. If we become a seriously cash flowing evergreen business that's able to invest hundreds of $millions back into risking and re-risking for quantitative, some mix of qualitative and qualitative and quantitative investments in things that build the Midwest that we want, the future that we want to be a part of. Great. We can have our own version of Silicon Valley, but we can't be Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It's not about we're so bad at imitating in the Midwest. It's not even funny. It's so bad. It's honestly, it's just cringy. Like it's we.
But the ambition that you noted that's on the coast of these like big ideas, whether it's like the Musks or the whoever, whatever you name your this big thinking founder, that's what draws them. But that's also it's not necessarily what's in our ethos, like to think that way. So it's like we want those ambitious people that we're draining supposedly. But we actually don't have the DNA to actually attract them. So, but so it goes back to we don't necessarily do we need really ambitious companies, or what would actually work that's sustainable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what I think is interesting.
We are our own culture with our own set of values, and what's fun about it is that it's Christian values.
Yeah.
But I think it's a misunderstood form of religion and not relationship that causes us to see all of the risk and none of God's kingdom coming on earth as it is in heaven, subduing it. These are all really big. These are all huge, monumental things that we're being tasked with.
Yeah.
And if you assume like the directive to go and subdue the earth happened in the garden as a part of God's design before the fall.
Yeah.
What else happened before the fall? Man and woman, Adam and Eve, marriage, the Trinity, like all of creation happened before the fall. So there's nothing that happened before the fall except our intimacy with God that is like redacted. And so the commission to subdue the earth is still there.
Yeah.
We, in the last 60 years, have handed that over to people who would rather build towers of Babel. That is the bastardized form of subduing the earth.
Yeah.
I think like we think about building a quote unquote redemptive, to use practices language like redemptive business or business as a mission. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to get back to this original subduing this. And that actually calls you to be having faith in Jesus and having a relationship, not faith, but like a relationship with him is going to actually cause you to do like the craziest things. And in fact, for hundreds of years, that was the case. The first real public hospital, 100 bed, Armenia, first century Christian.
Yeah.
We had Greek medicine for 400 years, but no one was taking that knowledge and saying, hey, let's treat who's going to be the first person in an aristocracy to say, hey, honey, no one's ever done this before, but let's let's take our mansion and our castle and let's have 100 sick and crazy people come live with us to heal them.
Yeah.
Like it's the love of God that causes you to do that. And it's the love of God that looks at, vulnerable girls and vulnerable children and says, hey, these are saints too. They're made in the image of God too. And we should teach them to read and write so that they can read the Bible and communicate that via writing. And so that's, in essence, like higher education and public education was started by Christians. Yeah. It is like God inspired so many of these things. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be shocked. Like we're all getting to heaven and realize we're both wrong. As Gable, I think it's Gable Price and Friends, like great song. But I think we're going to get to heaven. I think we're going to be shocked at like how much God has and actually has been working. But it's some weird form of self-righteousness in religion that has caused us to exclude ourselves from the marketplace. And the marketplace is not, we've excluded ourselves wholesale. Mm-hmm. Like, and I'm not answering your question at all about this is related. I'll get back to the point in a moment, but it's almost like there's a stigma if you're not a 501c3 ministry. Yeah. Like, are you really doing it for God? If you're not totally depriving yourself of, being like a functioning business with like well-paid employees in the marketplace, are you like, and have operational excellence as a business? It's like, it's kind of like, I've heard one person who's very, a huge authority on the matter say the two most dysfunctional places is nonprofits and family business.
I could see that.
They're like, it's like nonprofits take the cake, like over and over again, because there's no unifying. There's like often not no, but like there's hard to find a unifying incentive. So we have left the earth subduing to people who would rather glorify themselves in that process. And it's going to happen anyway. Here's the thing: you can either choose to be a tool or not be a tool. God's will is going to be accomplished. Yeah. And so you can take yourself out of the equation, but you can't. You not participating is not going to take God's plan out of the equation. So you could be exploited. We could build very exploitive industries. We could watch our friends and family die of chronic and incurable diseases because of the chemicals that were dumped into our food and water supply over a period of 60, 70 years. Like God's will still be accomplished. There will be consequences. Yeah. Like there will be some version of wandering in the desert for 40 years because we were too weak, too lazy, too scared, too greedy to say, let's maybe not dump this chemical into the town's water supply, even if it means we might risk profits or something in the meantime. Yeah. So the most redemptive, like the best governance is a benevolent monarchy. It's like the best person with the ultimate power, like 1-to-1. That's your best. In the same way, the best economic system is the most ambitious yet the most virtuistic at the same time, right? So it's like it's a benevolent, capitalist society. Like those and I think in different seasons we've had those. We had unifying missions like World War II, and I think to some degree it might happen again, but like it's like, I don't know why. I'm not saying we're going to take over the marketplace. I mean, we need to be in it.
Yeah, but I think the interesting thing, I mean, you hit on a lot of stuff there that I could probably respond to, but I think it goes back to the, like, one is it, are you following the Lord's will, but is also like, are you maximizing the gifts that the Lord has given you and actually living to the maximum potential that you have in the mandate of, subduing the earth or having dominion over the earth? That's a mandate. There's a mandate to make disciples. There's a mandate to populate the earth. There's these mandates, but it's almost like, there's a tendency to think that the pauper or the person running a nonprofit is like doing the most good when that actually could not be the most good because they're not maximizing the gifts that they've been given. They've kind of settled, which is kind of a sticky place to. You don't want to throw judgment.
We're not criticizing them.
It's not a criticism.
It's a criticism of a system that incentivizes that when it might not be.
Almost like glorifies that. But, the capitalist system is going to glorify like the billion-dollar exits and this like greed focus.
There's somewhere in between.
But there's no one. What I would say is it's similar to what we were talking about before with like West Michigan and like technology and everything, is that you have to have a champion that kind of rises above, that is going to be virtuous and is going to be the example and is going to be kind of a template, for lack of a better word, to say, hey, this is someone that's doing it, because you don't have a context for it. You have greedy, founder that is going after this huge exit and that's all they care about. Or you have this like person that's like, no, I'm just going to run a nonprofit. And that's the most good. Like there's not enough examples of that middle ground, in my opinion.
So the question is, can we build a generational business that it's a long-term investment in people that is technologically competitive? So we're at the cusp of we're pushing the limit. We're going into the unknown unknowns. We're not afraid of it. We're making new discoveries, sort of Bell Labs style. Like, can you have the best of the best in a fundamentally redemptive application? So like the product that you build out of those generational business, generational people, competitive technology is like the most net earth subduing you can do in the period of time that you've been allotted. And how do you do that in such a way that any of those three different categories aren't exploited? And the major risk to that is that you get an investor or someone with authority that is not aligned with one of those 3 points. Yeah. Right. And so what's been really, so getting back to the major point of like, what's been really hard in the last 2 years is, one, we've always trusted the Lord was going to provide exactly what we needed. So this is where you run that balance between I can freak out and try to control all the variables. Yeah. And be super anxious and make everyone around me miserable. Yeah. And then I could get the number with the wrong person the wrong authority,
Yeah.
the wrong long-term vision, or we can wait on the Lord to provide exactly what we need,
Yeah.
knowing that I'm not big enough to, there might be consequences for my disobedience, but I'm also not big enough to really screw it all up for him.
But
And
if my understanding of the Bible's anything, is that it comes at a hit to your vanity most times, right? That trust factor,
It's
like
humbling.
any of the major figures.
You're gonna allow the work to be done. Like, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. It's
Yeah.
embarrassing to run out of money. It's embarrassing to, not pay yourself, your leadership team, or your employees for a period of time. Like, that's not competitive.
Yeah.
That's not like, Event Horizon building cool stuff. That's getting in the way of all those things.
Yeah.
But it's like, is there a work that needs to be done in me? Is there a work that needs to be done in the team?
Yeah.
That, like, the main thing, like, part of my personal testimony is, like, I was, like, relatively successful, and, like, I loved building. I was building drones when I was 12. I built a company when I was 14.
Yeah.
I got baptized, and I was wearing a shirt of the company at the time called Windcraft Aviation, same legal entity. And I looked at it, and I almost threw up into the water. And I realized, like, the spiritual blinders came off.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is what I've been worshiping the whole time. All of my addictions and coping mechanisms were all the socially acceptable ones. Like, my siblings went different directions. We had some stuff come up in our family, and it was hard coming back from the Middle East. And so, but my coping mechanism was, I can be self-sufficient. I can be busy. I'm smart. I can make money.
Yeah.
I never really cared about the money. I was just really obsessed with aviation. And so I can build things and be, happy and forget about the chaos happening around me. And I can be independent, detach from all of my emotional relationships and just pour myself into this. And it was my idol. I was worshiping it. And I knew consciously, I was like, this is a huge liability to worship this thing. Like, I had all the head knowledge. I just didn't, Matthew 28. I realized, this is why I got baptized. I realized it's, go and make disciples, baptizing them in the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, teaching them to be obedient to my commands. And I realized I had not done any of those three things. I was like, man, I'm still stuck in addiction. I'm still, it feels like I can go to church on Sunday and I get this, like, nice moral teaching, and it has no power. So on Monday, I'm just, like, trying really hard. On Tuesday, I failed, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, no my pain. Hey, we're back Saturday night for youth group. And it's like, well, maybe I'm warmed back up to this. Sunday, ready for that nice feel good, warm milk on Sunday, get babied, and then, get thrown back to the wolves on Monday. And so, and so there's either one, God didn't exist and it was a social experiment or the social coping mechanism, or he did, and everything that he said in the word was actually going to happen and had been happening. And that's the question that everyone has to answer at some point, which is that, it's that. And my parents were very intentional to let us answer those questions for ourselves. But, and so I had read enough Richard Dawkins and considered, the rest of the world. I had experienced Islam, experienced a bunch of other religions, and I saw the fruit of that was terrible, like the foundational, like, we are really just evil as human beings, and we need a savior. So that was established experientially, and like philosophically and theologically, that was all very well established. So I, for like 2 seconds, was like, what if I'm that just convinced? What if I'm that influenced by the way I was raised? All the atheists are right. I'm just, like,
just conditioned,
sucking from the teat of like whatever I was born into, and some farmer language for you in there. But then I and the alternative is, what if I actually just forget about everything else, like literally everything else, and what if I just start doing what the Bible says, like just start reading it, just start doing it, and just, I'm not going to focus on anything else. And suddenly, like, everything, I can't even start to describe, like, the number of crazy miracles and like Orb existing in where we live, and our friends and these children, like our 2 kids, like the Lord was kind enough to, the morning of, for both of them, the Lord gave me a dream, And I walk downstairs. I'm like, honey, we're pregnant.
Yeah.
Like
That's
it's just like
amazing.
the intimacy. And, I think to this day, like I'm always humbled by like how much, the only thing God's not guaranteed to get at the end of all this is me.
Yeah.
Like cattle on 1,000 hills.
Yeah.
Like like the metaphysics that we have in like, God understands orbital. He created orbital mechanics. Like the whole space economy is his. The like quantum physics of like quantum communications is like that's all his. It's all cool, fun stuff to work on.
Yeah.
But like ultimately, the one thing that he's not entitled to, unless I give myself to him, is me.
Yeah.
And an eternity is a really long time. And so I started putting things into practice. Started making disciples. Got baptized. Started making disciples.
Yeah.
And then I sought out someone to teach me to be obedient. And started teaching others. And turns out God's word is like 100% real. And my life has gotten like twice as busy, but like twice as fruitful and like twice as fulfilling, like year over year. And so, how is that compatible at all with fundraising and building a tech company?
Yeah.
Like, how is that? And the answer to that question is like, it's not. So I was told in February of this year that I had to give up on one of those three things, like the building hardware in a place that in Michigan that we don't have a history of building venture-backed companies, building hardware in a place that does not have a history of building venture-backed companies, for like the farmer, the redemptive mission, the everyone else who needs aviation that's never had it before.
Yeah.
So you're fundamentally shifting like this is we invented the car level of like history.
Yeah.
Running that business internally consistently redemptive. So like our customers are being redeemed by the tools that we build. Our employees their lives are being affected and redeemed by the things that we build.
Yeah.
And there was this, and we're not perfect at any of those three things, but I was basically told I have to give up on one of those like four. So you have to throw in the cards and say, cool, I'm not building a generational business anymore. I'm building for 5 years or 10 years, and then I'm going to exit to another Texatron or someone, play the money game. We're going to exploit our employees to just go as absolutely hard as we can. Like Node 1, which is what we call our R&D facility, is not going to be a professional artist colony anymore. It's going to be a super strict, super regimented, and like little to no creativity. Do what Alex tells you to do. Lost a lot of faith in, like again, constantly humbled by like how terrible I can be and how terrible other people can be. I unfortunately rarely factor that into like my plans. I'm like, wow, we just got screwed. Like. Yeah. Man, that was not
Didn't
not
see
part.
That coming.
I think we're considering that we could get screwed more now.
Yeah.
So that's good. I can screw myself more now. So there's a certain degree of humility that has been the work of the last couple of years. And me and my co-founder Brian, we sat down and we talked for a good couple hours. And at the end of it, we were just like collapsed, and I was on like a love seat sitting sideways, and he was laying down on the couch, had a headache. And we're not like, I don't care if we run out of money. I don't know if we can pay our mortgage next month. I don't know if we can pay our mortgage this month, but like we are both completely broke. But if the Lord's in this, going back to I was getting baptized, I saw that shirt and I said, Lord, if you're in this, I have nothing to worry about. Yeah. But if you're not in this, I want nothing to do with this. Yeah. So Brian and I are sitting there on the couch saying like, the Lord's in this.
We got to keep going.
The Lord's in this. Yeah. Like I made a commitment, and not just I made a commitment, but like he keeps showing up. Yeah. In spite of my own brokenness. Yeah. He keeps showing up over and over again. Yeah. And like this is like milk showing up at the orphanage for breakfast style provision, like getting like a tax refund the day that payroll is due, getting, just crazy. Like I can't even begin to describe. Like that's happened twice. Like we've been like. And so it's one thing, and no one wants to, you're either going to like put yourself in a category like Christians like brag about how like the razor thin, whatever, I live on the hairy edge financially, whatever. Yeah. That's not a good thing. A lot of the time, again, doing my family finances right now. So kind of top of mind. But and then you have like the people who are like success culture. They might be on the hairy edge, but they're never going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so it's like we have no pride in this.
Yeah.
I don't have, like, if he's in this, he's going to show up and it's going to be great. It's going to be his testimony.
Yeah.
And so we didn't, and we ended up finding a investor family office out of Texas that believes in all four of those things. How do we build a revenue generating generational business that is redemptive internally, externally?
Yeah.
That's still a competitive technology company in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And what that means is that we have less, like the demographic of investor that's going to like, man, I really believe in this.
Excited about that and believe in that.
Get excited about that. Yeah. You're just narrowing your field down to like, I'm being honest, like 10 people.
Yeah.
Like, in America, you think the number of people who like have been given those opportunities, but have successfully lived lives and raised families that haven't bowed down to one of those, sex, money, power idols. Yeah. And it's just a really rare group of people. But that's the group of people that we want to be with. Like I'd rather run a smaller business. I'd rather grow slower. Yeah. I would rather continue to know all of my employees and not grow, hyperscale. Yeah. And partner with this tribe of people who are not willing to compromise in those three categories. Yeah.
So like, how do you balance like building that company with your faith, and what do you see like out there in the marketplace? You said that, there's only a handful of VCs that align with those values. Yeah. It seems like though you're seeing a little bit of resurgence of some other like founders that are kind of in that space. And I don't know like what your experience has been, out there.
Yeah. When I received the Thiel Fellowship in 2021, I was like one of the first, probably not the first, but one of the first like openly professing Christians. Mostly because my convictions, and I explained like how we, I was kind of like pulled a Elijah and doused the altar with 12 ampoules of water, and like the Lord set on fire anyway. That's a summary of how I got the Thiel Fellowship. Yeah. So it's pretty clear that that the Lord had me there for a reason. Yeah. I'm entering a room full of people who were suffering from the same addiction, the same running. The difference between running towards something and running away from something is indistinguishable. So you take a picture of someone who's running and you're like, are they being chased? Are they running towards something they love? And like so often we think we're running towards something we love, but we're actually being chased. And we're running away from it. For me, it was, my family was falling apart after coming back from Turkey. Yeah. And so I convinced myself and convinced everyone else around me that I was running towards, and I really was to some degree, but the Lord was able to redeem that. Yeah. He turned my running away from family back into running towards this, his kingdom on earth as in heaven, like this incredibly creative and beautiful future that he wanted to use me to help build. And that the Thiel Fellowship was just one example of that. And so you see a lot of the guys, Soren Monroe Anderson and Augustus DeRico are both in the Thiel Fellowship. In 2001, it was like, I had conversations with people who, then who were shocked that someone like me existed. I was like this freak of nature. Yeah. Like walked in and they're like, wait, you believe like you believe in God. Okay, cool. That's fun. But like you believe Jesus was God and forgave you for your sins. And now like you have, explain this. Like I was like this Christian.
He's like actively guiding your steps and like you're listening to
this guy. Holy Spirit like speaks in your head and tells you where to put your company. Like that is crazy. And so, I think they expected a Christian fundamentalist, whatever like caricature the media portrays of, a Midwest Christian kid in the middle, international background, but still just like, on the outside, I very much look like I fit in here, despite being a third culture kid. And so actually you'll see a lot of the guys who are building companies in the Gundo, even the ones who There was recently a panel discussion you probably find on X. Time Morse did it, and I realized actually in that conversation how many of them are third culture kids themselves. So a lot of expats, and the ones that aren't have chosen, like they had incubated this greater sense of awareness that the world is not as small as my suburban backyard and the high school that I go to and the prom king and queen and the college that I get into or the job I do and don't get. Like those things don't matter. Yeah. At some point they found out those things don't matter, but there's this empty. So I'm surrounded by these super high functioning. The world's only 20 under 20. Half of them are there because they're geniuses and socially could hardly carry on a conversation. Half of them are there because they're ridiculously stubborn. Yeah. Like just will never quit. I fall into the latter category, as in like there's a little bit of imposter syndrome of like, oh, there's really, really smart people here. Yeah. And I just pushed through all the obstacles and, somehow ended up on this side. And so, we see a resurgence, I think, of Christian values. When I back to 2021, it was just the beginning of the sort of Anduro hype train and Peter Thiel coming out as like with biblical values, and Trey Stevens. Actually, behind the scenes, what most people don't know is that a lot of what we're seeing in San Francisco today was seeds planted by Francis Chan and the We Are Church movement.
Interesting.
Starting in 2018.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. Yeah. I follow a little bit of that. Yeah. Yeah.
So most people are attributing a lot of this, like, well, the tech leaders are coming to faith. Behind the scenes, they're coming to faith through people who are making disciples in San Francisco. Not so much, like there's church stuff, like there's been that stuff really hasn't changed much. It's existed for a long time. Yeah. But people who were really good operators, really good engineers, really good, technicians, master their craft, competitive founders, competitive early teams, employees, who said, I'm going to do Matthew 28 for real. Yeah. And stop living on the fence, and, kind of with sort of Francis Chan's like convictions of like, I am not going to let building a church stop me from reaching people with God's kingdom. Yeah. As ironic, as odd as those two things, really were in conflict. Yeah. And so its culture has changed a lot, but the problem with that is that despite what we're seeing, the Gundo is kind of like what you see is not very, very necessary, very important, lots of critical work happening, very necessary for them culturally to be the spearhead. What I'm anxious about is because I've kind of watched this happen. Now what's cool is that I was the only Christian in the Thiel Fellowship, and now there's a dozen or more of us, at least 6 of them like coming to faith in the last couple of years as a direct response to just the faithfulness of people around in the Thiel Fellowship making disciples, like straight Matthew 28. So my concern is that it's become popular. There's a form of Christianity that the same way, like it's just humans, we're corrupt. We are going to make compromises. And I'm not worried about the compromises so much. Like the Lord's going to work all that stuff out. But, it went from like, let me solicit, without any input, let me solicit Alex, because he's the religious kid, about like these horrific things that I'm doing in my private life, and what does he think about them, to try to get like some reaction or shock value or whatever, and be like, look, sin is sin. Doesn't matter if you're getting drunk in front of Fox News or at an orgy at Burning Man. Like sin is sin. The brokenness of the heart is broken and expresses itself in all kinds of ways, and like we all need freedom from that. And so there was I think that there's a recognition of what's missing. There's a recognition that God and Jesus is the answer. There is probably falling into the same trap that I did growing up, which is self-righteousness and a form of religion that didn't have any power. And so it's going to mature over time, but it just requires us to continue to sharpen each other. But to your point about investors is that VC structurally is incompatible with that. So right now, if you talk to any of those guys behind closed doors, it's like they would rather be building private cash flowing businesses, and some of them have. But in order to build the foundational pieces that they're like, whether it's American, and this is not wrong, it just, you get to choose what you want to do. They said, I will kind of venture max, for lack of a better, I'm going to max out this system. I'm going to fully leverage this system, knowing that my business is going to be a certain kind of business, as long as the mission gets accomplished. And that, is appropriate. Like, use all of Sodom's money to build God's kingdom. Not an issue. But it's incompatible. You're just going to be like a D-League startup if you try to run that same route here in the Midwest. And the reason why it's really important for us to be in the Midwest is we're making things physically. And making things physically has always been the domain of revenue-generating, cash-flowing businesses that are multi-generational. And whereas everyone else has built technology or tech stacks on the coast, even the biggest players that have raised the most money are still trying to figure out how to build things. And you see that with Enduro and Arsenal. Arsenal is still, they've got some great facilities on the coast, but they can't scale on the coast, and so they're going to Ohio. They have yet to figure out how to make. And it's not a ding. They should, but they have on. It's and I'm not accusing them of being double-minded, but you have to intentionally represent something to SaaS investors who have been doing business a certain way with high multiple return, really short cycle time SaaS for a long time. You have to represent something to them. And you have to then choose to turn around and build the business that's still going to accomplish your mission without making too many compromises. And I guess in my case, I'm just too. I'm probably just too lazy to have those two sides. Whereas like what we're doing is who we are is very simple. Like, we have one identity, and we are making accessible aviation for all mankind. What that means is that we now, for the first time in human history, will have the tool to accomplish the Great Commission at the same time that the Bible is being translated into every language. That's why I'm here. That's why that was the goal that was given. That was the race that we have to run. Not have to run, we get to run. And I'm obsessed with aviation. I want to build the best damn airplanes. I want to build thousands, if not millions of them, and make them a commodity. And I want to make them safe with the best autopilots. And we want to fly across oceans and protect people from FPV drone swarms. And we want to be able to be logistics when all of the boats are getting blown up. We want to be your power when the substations are going down due to cyber attacks. We want to stand in the gap for the widows and orphans. And I think that introducing structural compromises by taking structurally compromised capital is just going to keep us from doing that. Now, you have to have the faith in maybe faith is the wrong word for this, but you have to have the faith that it's not going to kill you before it starts impeding your success, if that makes sense. You have to have the faith that it's not going to lead to some form of infant mortality. That is like, well, we didn't raise enough, or we didn't cycle this, or we didn't have the right investors on our board, or we didn't do these things. Like, you actually have to have the faith that this is what being a founder or an investor is, and not a founder or investor, but an outlier. It's like, you have to have the faith that 99% of people are wrong. And, it's that 99% of investors who are very consistent with their returns are just wrong about this one. And that 99% of founders who are very consistently building companies, maybe not companies that return a lot of capital, but the ones who raise a lot of capital. There's all kinds of commentary about the economy right now. But that they're just wrong about this one. Somehow. And so,
But like you said, that's what makes a founder. That's part of the game.
It is. And at some point, I think time will tell. It'll be self-evident,
Yeah.
and I want as much as possible to make sure that there are enough observers of us. It's like not intentionally. This is the weird part. You just feel like an idiot every time you dump more water on the altar. You're just like, man, like I'm gonna be so embarrassed when this thing doesn't light on fire.
Yeah.
Like everyone who, just Elijah.
Yeah. You just think in the back of your head.
Yeah, and you're like, man, this is like, all of the prophets of Baal. You're like, you're one dude. You're making it harder for God.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. All of that is so that God gets to light it up and retake Israel.
Yeah.
Like, and now I say Israel, it's gonna, but like, it retake His people.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
and so if as much witness as we can have for that is the only point of me talking about this right now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just becomes self-evident. I was either wrong, and it will become self-evident that I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is going to reflect. I don't think that's any reflection on God. Because I think some of these are going to happen. Some of these things are going to happen inevitably. The weapons are going to get used. We might not be there to pick up the pieces. I hope someone is.
Yeah.
The weapons are going to get used. The flying taxis are going to happen. The flying infrastructure is going to happen at some point. We're the only ones really, really working on it right now, like making it our point. Airplanes should become airplanes should become a commodity again.
But to your point, like we talked about earlier, like who better to do it than
Christians?
We should be doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm just amped after hearing you talk about all this. It's just like extremely encouraging to me. Like, and I hope that, just this discussion really encourages more Christians out there to follow in those footsteps, to really, I think, one, where it's like diving into understanding where they're at with their faith and what their life, how their life is reflecting that, then also just deepening their faith in, hey, Lord, what path do you have for me that I'm not living in it?
Yep.
And I think that's extremely inspiring, especially in a world like tech where it's dominated by valuations and exits, and there's not enough of that voice, Yeah. So thank you, Alex, so much for coming in, man. I really appreciate it. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. See ya.